This is going to be a kind of first AMA session, and I'm very happy to host Shubhram today. So when the 2023 is going to end, right? The pace of AI innovation in 2023 was really astounding, and everybody know that. And even more impressive thing was how the product people, right? So all of us, how the product people applied this technology to make a real difference in all our products to solve the users' needs better, right? So that was really exciting to see. And once again, today we have Subhram, 2021 passed out from IIT Kharagpur and the co-founder of Iterate AI. In this last 3 years, Subhram has built two consumer tech products from scratch, growing one of them to over 1 million users. I hope many of you know how great achievement is all about. And also outside of his work, he's a state level 400 meter sprinter and also competes in city level boxing tournaments too. So in this AMA session, let us learn from his experience, especially what all needed for a product success. And also, we have a set of questions that especially curates about how to get into the product management as a career path as earliest as possible, those who are very aspirant to that. Once again, I extend a warm welcome to Shubhram on behalf of the product community. Shubhram, yeah.
Hey, thanks a lot, Dinesh. My pleasure.
Great. So, yeah, let me begin with a very common question, right? Despite coming from IIT and you having a very strong programming skills, what made you to choose product management as your career path, Subhram?
So I won't say that I had a very strong programming skill set, but I did know how to read code, how different tech structures work. So, for example, like how encryption works or something of that sort. But what I always felt while preparing for placements or interviews of internships, वगैरह, I realized that if I am into coding, if I am into hardcore coding, I am not getting the context of what business problem is getting solved by virtue of it. And that's where I wanted to step in and find out what are the career trajectories that enable me to solve real business problems, real user problems, more succinctly, understanding with more understanding than just a tech uh, understanding in my head. Right? And that's when I figured out that there are two career paths which help in this a lot. One is, of course, product management, which I dived into, and the other was management consulting, and I was preparing for that as well. And later, while evaluating which should I choose, like after having been into last round of interviews in both kind of companies, I spoke to a lot of seniors of my college to figure out what would be a better fit for me. And that's when I learned that while management consulting gives you a flavor of problem solving across different industries in a very short span of time, product management not just gives you a flavor of solving problems, but also how a product is built around it with deeper and deeper iterations. So that's when I thought about diving into product management, and that's how it has been.
Nice of that, Shubhram. So when I get into different communities or different events, people used to ask, especially college students, they would be asking, how should I start a career, right? So like, how can I get into product management right after the college, right? So I always wonder whether a student should start his career straight away into a chapter. Let's say it could be a product manager or it could be of UX designer. Is it a good idea, or is it okay to start as a software engineer, find out his passion, and then venture into respective chapter? What is your thoughts on that, Subhram?
So I chose the first approach, so my answer might be biased a bit, but I think it depends on what long-term goal you have for yourself, right? So while I was going out of college, I pretty much had this very clear in my head that I want to have my own startup in the long run. And I tried to figure out what would help me the best in that journey, in that like how will I land there faster? How will I be good enough to do that well, right? And that's where I chose product management. But if like even if that is what people want to do in the long term, they still can choose the other option of going into software development roles and then building that skill set of creating code for software and then diving into what they want to do as an entrepreneur, right? But in that case, one thing to note is not losing the foresight of knowing problem statements in the form of how users feel the problem, not getting lost in the nuances of creating code. So that would be how I evaluate if someone should dive into a product role versus a software role if the long-term vision is to create something of their own, right? But other than that, it's also about what you enjoy more. I have seen my friends, a lot of from my friends from college enjoyed coding, like deep rooted coding and solving engineering problems much more than solving business problems, right? So it depends on what you enjoy more. But for me, it has always been that I loved solving user problems, business problems more than solving engineering problems. So to give an example, if you tell me, hey, this is something that is bothering a certain person, how do I solve that? That would excite me a lot more than saying, hey, this particular algorithm is running at X speed. How can I make it 10X? Right? That's not something that I would find as much interest as the first one.
Makes sense. So let me just dive into a different question. Like, let us consider you are in an era 20 years back or 10 years back where there is no such career called product manager, right? So you told that you're aspiring to towards the thing like solving problems, users problems, right? So let us consider you still have the solving users problems as a main thing, and what you would have done.
I think the question is hypothetical, but at that point of time, the only option that I would have had would be to join a management consulting company, because management consulting firms are the ones where you get exposure to a lot of business problems. So that might have been the choice I made, but not sure, man, because it's very hypothetical.
Makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, you have been a good sports person, right? So how was your experience in sports that influenced your approach towards product management? Whether it influenced or it doesn't.
I think whatever I learned from sports influenced everything in my life. And like it starts from very nuanced aspects like discipline, routine, uh, not losing hope when things are not going your way, all the way up to keeping at something continuously, irrespective of whether it's turning out like in the positive direction or not, right? So I can give some examples on this. So and this is not from the PM career experience, because that has been like, I have left it 6 months back, right? For 6 months, I'm more into building my own company. So very recent example would be when I was trying to reach out to people to discuss about the problem statement I'm trying to solve with my startup, right? Like I knew that there was one sudden day on a week when I wanted to have answers to set of questions by the end of the next week, right? And in the process, I just split that part. Like if I had to achieve that I want to get answers of those questions, I sat down to split it into parts. And one first part was to find find the right set of people to reach out to and get answers from. The second is setting up calls with those people. The third is actually getting into the calls, and fourth is uncovering insights by knowing what the call was all about, right? And in this process, like there is a lot of manual grunt work involved, if you understand, right? First of all, you have to scout people who will be able to answer your question. And for getting to know what who will be able to answer your questions, you have to know that person. You have to know the background of the person, where they have worked, what kind of problem statements that they might have faced, all of that. And then from there, only a certain segment of people will actually be willing to help you out. And from there will be only a few people that will come into a call to discuss this with you, discuss the problem statement you're trying to figure out answers to with you. And then you have to synthesize insights. So there is definitely going to be drop off at every part of the funnel, right? Now, when you do the first thing, you're always in the thoughts of whether you will be able to achieve that final goal you have set for yourself, right? But what sports taught me is never get bothered by whether or not the final goal will be achieved, and rather focus on what you have set. Like, so what I do is whenever I have a final goal, I will split that into these steps. I will have a goal thing for each of these steps, and then focus all my attention on achieving that individual steps goals. So step one is to find out respective people. So I set a goal for myself that I will find out 50 odd people that can help me out. That was the goal. And I just went about it without thinking what would happen uh, at the end of the week, whether I will be able to figure out answers to the questions I have or not. Post that, from like when I reached out to those 50 people, about 10 people responded back, right? Then I had to set calls to discuss things with them. And I knew that out of those 10 people, maybe nobody comes into a call. But my objective was to get at least 5 people from that list of 10 to get into the call. So at each step, not thinking about what would happen later in the future, but rather focusing on that one activity you are doing right now is something that I think I learned from sports, from whatever, like both sprinting and boxing. Because in sports, you see, like you focus on the practice. You don't know what is going to happen when you compete, right? But there should not be any gap in the practice.
Makes sense. Really makes sense. So I think you have nailed the art of user interview. That is a typical product manager's role.
Yeah.
Right. So it's on outside view, it would be looking very easy, but picking the right set of users, asking them questions, making them to answer, it's really a hard job. There people would say different techniques like ask 5 whys, you will get good clarification, all this, but who will be very patient, right? If you ask why and why and why, right? That's not going to be the case. But and one more thing is sustaining to do the full effort on that particular part. So that is another great thing I see.
I think with respect to user interviews, there was one thing I had in mind. Like this came up just now when you were saying this. I think 2 things have worked for me very well, especially when I was in my product management career, right? One thing was being very honest to the person at the other end about what you are trying to achieve from that conversation. Like there should not be any gray area around that. And the other thing was like assuming that you like don't go with an assumption that you know things. It's always better to go with an assumption that you have nothing, you don't know anything, or whatever you know might be wrong, and then ask questions on that line of like on in that way. Because what I have realized over time is that people feel empowered when they are helping you, when they have this feeling of helping you rather than having this feeling ki, this other person knows it, so what's the point of me telling that other person about anything, right? So it's always better to go with the approach of please help me out here than saying ki, I will do something for you, for this you have to give me insights.
Absolutely, I agree to that. Yeah. So like let me again come with your sports experience, right? So can you share any specific instance where you applied your life mantra? You have mentioned it, controlling the inputs. So just want to understand more. What is that controlling the inputs and where you have applied in your life instance?
But I think one example was what I gave right now, where I would just focus on the input, that is that particular step, right? But this is something that keeps on happening with everything, right? So, for example, at this point, I am trying to find out pilot customers who try out my product. Now, in that, like there will be multiple disappointments that I face. Like I'll go out to 100 customers, like I'm already in the process, and like probably 90 of them will not be interested in using it, or would not have time to spare for using it, looking at it, and so on, right? But that inherent belief that if you keep on doing it, you will achieve what you want at some point, right? That is itself is something that I feel is very critical. And like, so this example that I gave in like when you asked me the previous question is a very right example of how I always focus on controlling the inputs like uh, rather than imagining what would happen, what could happen, and so on.
Makes sense. So before I get into the next question, Siddharth, do we have any questions, or would you like to go with any?
So far, like there are no questions on chat.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go ahead. People like quick reminder, like if you have any questions, do put it on chat. We will be able to take it with Shubhram.
Or even if you are comfortable to open up directly, you can just raise your hand so that might make sense too.
Okay, there is like one question from Jaya Krishna.
Mhm.
Can you tell more about your startup?
Yeah, sure. Why not? That's something I've been going around telling people quite a lot these days. So yeah, like I have a belief that 10 years down the line, every software, every app that people will use will have a delightful user experience. There will be nothing that just survives because of the functionality it provides. Delight will be a core thing in any product. Now, to achieve that reality, to achieve that future, I am trying to create an AI app developer, which will have the code writing capability to solve any product problem instantly and will be available to the disposal of a product team 24/7. Now, what do I mean by product problems, right? So things like changing UI UX designs, things like instrumenting app events for tools, for analytics tools, customer engagement platforms, etc. Integrating SDKs into the code base. All of these are product problems that an engineer, an app side developer solves. So that should be done by the AI app developer that I'm creating. And this will also result in real human app developers getting enough bandwidth to focus on the core engineering problems like optimizing for speed, uh, doing scalable, whatever is needed to maintain scalability, all of that stuff, right? So that's what I am trying to build. And we are currently in the initial stages of building the MVP. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm trying to do.
Nice. So, Jai Krishna, you have a follow-up question, or can I?
No, bro, you can continue.
Okay. Okay. So, Shubhram, from your
Bro, just a doubt actually. So this like Microsoft has released this Copilot, right? So Microsoft has like Power Apps and all, so that in there like users itself can like edit and do, right? Like people who are just like trying to develop an app, if they having like changing some issues in design or something, they can change with like Copilot, right? In that Power Apps.
This works for the case where like the coder and the product person is same, right? Because the output of what you are saying, and there are other multiple such tools, the output is essentially code. And what I have observed in my couple of years of experience as a product person is that product people hate looking into code and going into the nuances of it. So that's the wedge that we have at this point, where our tool will not produce code. It will just get you the end result. And code is basically an interim part of the process. And that should be something that we take care internally instead of the people at the company having to do it. So yeah, that's what we think. I think
Yeah,
someone raised their hands.
Yeah, we have
I think
Sindhu.
Surati raised.
Sindhu raised it and
Yep,
Sindhu
yep.
also has.
Can I go with my question?
Yes, please.
Okay, okay. Hi, all. Hi, Shubhram. Really glad to
Hi, man.
meet you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. A quick question, just to understand what is it, the generation of yours, right? In the 20s, early 20s, getting into the startup space, right? Uh, okay. Yeah, you said clearly that you had already a startup in mind. Okay. But for people who are like in their 30s, like me, who really do not have that what is it, itching or burning desire to get into the startup space, but very interested in the product space or something like that, right? We had a career called BA. I think Dinesh was asking this question to you. There was BA was our kind of a product person. So now we are more, or we are almost in the project manager space, but luckily few of us are still sticking to this product space. So, so the question is, what do you suggest? Like, not towards the startup, but to develop ourselves in the current generation of AI and stuff. What do you suggest? Should we just continue with what comes up in our career, or should we kind of have to take some risks and break and choose a different path?
Okay. tough question, heavy question actually. But I think it all depends on what your motivations are, right? So I am a person who is always a believer of proactive, like going after something, right? And like it's not necessary to go after a startup career or anything. Like I mean, building your own startup or anything. But I feel that whatever career option you choose for yourself, you should go after it. And I'm a big believer of excellence in the sense that whatever I'm doing, I should be probably in the top notch doing it, at least in my vicinity. So even if you take examples of me training for the 400 meter sprint thing that I used to do when I was in college and I played at the state, right? Or the boxing thing that I do it like for me, boxing is not something that I do for leisure or anything. I do it with the intention that I should be better than people who I practice with. So I practice with city level boxers here, or some of them have also been to state and all. But like when I spend that 2.5 hours in the day, I'm very focused on saying ki I want to be better than all of them in couple of years, right? So and that applies everywhere. When I was into product management, like although I knew that I wanted to go into building my own startup, I wanted to be the best possible product manager in that space, which I had. Like people in my company, people who are my batchmates and are in different other companies and their acquaintances in that pool of product managers, I wanted to be the best, right? So chasing excellence is something that has helped me a lot. And I think like I'm a huge believer that whatever you do, you should try to figure out what is that mystery that you can solve in your like in your space. I think there is this Paul Graham writes about writes articles, essays on different topics, and I was always inspired by one topic called like how to do great work. So there's this essay that Paul Graham wrote saying ki how to do great work, and in that he speaks about like how to find out things that others won't put effort to find out in your field of work. So like let's take a random example, right? So my dad is a like electrical diploma and he used to work in the state electricity supply board, right? But towards the end of the career, he was probably that one go-to person for people to know anything about any problem related to electricity supply, which was his domain, right? He was the master of that domain in the city. So it was not something too big, too fancy, not something that would earn him too much money, but he was very passionate about what he was doing. And that made him like that gave him the respect from other people around him about that small thing that he was doing, right? So I think that's how I approach life. So irrespective of whether AI will come, right? So coming to the second part of your question, with the advent of AI, how should one think about product management as a career, or whether should someone stick to it or change trajectories? I think any field will not become obsolete. AI will be more of an augmentation on top of that field. It might be rebranded, renamed with something else in some other name, but the core purpose will still remain. So, for example, I was talking about my startup trying to create an AI app developer. Like that's my long-term vision, right? There will be an AI app developer who takes care of all product problems. But that does not mean that app developers will cease to exist. It just means that app developers will now focus more on the core engineering problem, something that they enjoy doing a lot more than solving UI UX bugs, changing designs, changing text copies, doing some SDK integrations. Those are not things that drive them, that excite them. And hard engineering problems is what excites them, and that would become like they would first be able to have enough time to do that. Second, they will have enough resources because of the advent of AI to learn about how to solve those hard problems. So that's how I think about this.
Thank you. Thanks, Shubhram. Yeah. Thanks, Dinesh. Amber.
Yeah, we have.
One more person who raised hand, I guess.
Yeah, Sindhuran is.
Yeah. Hi, Subhram. So can you hear me? Oh, sweet. So I have a couple of questions. First questions would be, you have taken decisions on moving from business consultant to a product manager. So that's what you said, right?
it was not moving from a business consultant to a product manager. It was like in the final year of college, I was interviewing for both kind of companies, management consulting companies like McKinsey, Bain, etc., and product management roles in Flipkart, Loadshare, etc. And I took a call of joining, like when I was at a stage where I was in the final round of interview in BCG, Loadshare, Flipkart, etc. And at that point, I spoke to seniors who are in those companies in those roles to figure out more details about it, and then took a call ki, okay, BCG, I won't want to go. So there's no point in giving the final round of interview, and like that's essentially blocking a seat for someone else who could have gone there. So not going in that direction, and rather focusing to clear the Loadshare interview, Flipkart interview, and so on.
Okay, so in this case, what would be the big difference? Because the product manager, I know it's a very fancy word used in the market, but many product managers are not really doing a product manager role. But when it comes to real product manager, what do you think that the essence would have for a product manager? It's more on the numbers and trying to analyze. No, of course, everybody's trying to solve a problem, but every mindset of solving a same problem would have come from a different background. If you get that, you can solve the same problem in a different way from a different personalities. That's how.
Got it. I think as long as the problem is getting solved, it doesn't matter what's your approach.
Yeah.
But
So
the problem
that's where,
should get solved.
yeah, that's where my question comes from. So you're from an very elite school of the thoughts that comes in, and someone who comes with an experience, like from BA, someone was saying, or from a product owner. What would your thought, since you have worked with a lot of people around your vicinity and your circles, you have come across many people. Some would have come from elite school, some would have come from scratch, some could have had a lot of experience, but not from a big elite. So what would you one specific things that you look in when someone's getting into product should have like their fundamentals perfect? Like if you're going for a data analyst, you need to know your statistics. Even though you do not know Python can be learned, but you need to know your statistics, like the fundamentals. So what are the fundamentals you think that someone needs to be very strong at?
Okay, I think I don't I'll tell you this. So it's not specific to product roles. I think something that I look for in both kinds of people, like people whom I am trying to get into my startup, or people whom I aspired to work with when I was joining first Loadshare, second Stable Money and all, was like people who have two traits. One, like extreme hunger to learn. Doesn't matter where they are now, as long as they are like crazy hungry to learn more and more and more, that should be good. And second is like openness to admit what they don't know, like being shameless about that. So these are the two things I have seen people have, like people who have succeeded in their respective places have quite a lot. And like my observation is all like definitely very restricted to places where I worked and the friends I have had. But I think that's been the common element across people, across whoever I have seen.
Okay, great. So why I ask this question is like, someone who's not from a product background and trying to crack into it, they can't, they can do it in their resume, but not when it comes to the interview. So when you say, let's say, I want to be very honest and I want to start learning things, it's going to be a little difficult for the interviewer person to take him, okay, let him give a chance and see how it's going to do. I don't think in reality it's going to work like that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And for that, you have to show, the main thing is people believe that you are capable of doing something when you have shown previous evidence of having done that thing, right? So the best, that's the going in hypothesis that interviewers have, or anyone will have. Ki past trajectory is a very good indicator of what could a future trajectory be like for a person. Like that's the truth for humans. Now, in that, like, let's say if I focus solely on product as a career option, and you want to go and convince the hiring person that you have these two traits of learning aggressively and open, like being open about what you don't know, right? I think what you don't, like being open about what you don't know is very easy. Like you just have, like in the interview, whatever questions they ask, if you understand it, it's fine. If you don't understand it, you just tell them that, hey, can you explain this better? This is something I am not sure about. So that comes out as a part of the interview itself. but showing that you are hungry to learn could be demonstrated in ways, like in very creative ways, right? So one could be like, in the past you can show that, hey, this was something that I had no clue about and I learned aggressively, and now I am probably a master in that small thing. Any small thing, it could be any small things, right? Or let's say you can say, hey, before this interview, I applied at this XYZ company. I had no clue about the company, what the company does, but now I am at this point where I know like so much, and that so much can be demonstrated. So I'll tell you examples. When I was interviewing for stable money after Loadshare, right? So at that point, like I went in the interview and I had like, this is what I learned before the interview to show that, hey, I can learn. I knew like what stable money does. I knew like who are the competitors of stable money and what do they do. I spoke to product managers in those competitor companies to figure out what could be their possible next quarter roadmap. I did an estimation to figure out what could be the revenue that stable money makes. And in that process of doing this estimation, one, I had to figure out, stable money today sells fixed deposits online, right? So one, I had to figure out, okay, what is the potential market that will buy a fixed deposit online? And second, I had to figure out how much do different banks provide as a commission to an enabler who is enabling people to buy FD from their platform, right? I think, so all of this, right? And then speaking to people inside stable money, some junior product intern or someone, to find out about the culture of the company. Hey, what is the thing that's bothering the company the most at that point of time? What do they want to achieve in the next 1 month? And then having a rough blurb, I mean, a rough sentence that I can pitch to the other person saying, hey, this is what I have learned from people in your company, and this is how I think I can help. And apart from that, this is what my analysis says about this company. Am I right about this? So, and like, I was not absolutely right. So ballpark wise, I was right because of all the research I did, but it doesn't matter whether you're absolutely right. It's all about whether you are putting in that effort and do you have that hunger to learn about the space. So when you go to an interview with this much thought into it, it shows the other person that you have done your research and you are always hungry for learning about it. Because if someone is not hungry for learning about it, they will give up because they will think that, hey, I've applied to 10 different places. I don't know whether this will convert or not in the first place. So let's not give so much of efforts. But if you have that hunger to go into details of each of those 10 companies, irrespective of how much time it takes, it can take 10 hours every day, it can take 15 hours every day. But if you're putting in that effort, it shows up in the interview.
Oh, thanks, Over. That's what really good. Thank you. That really helped me out.
Glad, man.
Okay, we have one more question from Dishank. With the new AI startups are launching every week, how do you see sustainability of AI startups?
Yeah, I think it's all about willpower. And let's say there are lots of examples where people will say Sam Altman came on the last OpenAI Dev Day and whatever announcements happened that led to the death of a lot of startups. But if you go deeper, you would know that it's not that most of those startups died. It's most of those startups pivoted. They are now trying out something else, right? So one thing I have learned, like over the last 6 months, is that it doesn't matter what you do now. The vision that you have for yourself is what matters, right? So my vision, as I told you, that I believe that 10 years down the line, every app, every software, every digital experience that humans try out, humans experience, will have a very delightful experience. That will be very delightful, right? So that's the vision I have, and that's what I want to achieve. And there could be n number of ways to achieve it. So what I'm doing today with my startup is something that's only approach one, or maybe approach 2, 3, whatever it is, right? There could be 100 approaches towards that, and some announcement somewhere or some incident across the world can kill this approach, but it does not mean that I cannot achieve that vision. So yeah, it's all about willpower, I would say.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yes, Sujay, please go ahead. Sujay?
I think you are on mute.
Yeah.
Hey, so product management, and in terms of in later stages of life, people are looking for an MBA and getting into companies like Zoho and other known companies. They need an MBA,
Yeah.
and the smaller companies, they are looking for proof of concept. So, what approach do you give for people who want to get into these startups? They seem to hit a roadblock when there is no MBA.
Got it. It depends on what kind of companies you want to apply for. If your goal is to get into larger scale startups, let's say a Flipkart or let's say a Zoho, as you mentioned, right? You might have to think deeper about getting that MBA degree, right?
Right.
Versus if you are willing to work at a smaller place, and that's what I have always wanted to. So for me, it was always like irrespective of whether I have the like I build my own startup or not, it was always that I would work at a smaller scale org, right?
Mhm.
Uh, so in that you don't need that MBA degree for yourself. So that's a decision that you have to take. Where do you see yourself? What do you want to achieve is one question, and it's like what do you want to achieve and do whatever it takes to achieve that is one thing. See, one more approach, let's say if your end goal is to go for companies like Zoho and all, one more approach could be work at a smaller place, then work at a place which is little larger. So if you start working at a seed stage company, you work there till it grows to a series A, let's say, and then you start at a series B company and stay there for, let's say, when it is at a series C. And then you have built enough reputation for yourself to directly go into a place like Zoho, let's say. So that is another approach. So you have
Right.
to figure out what is the goal you have, how much time do you want to give yourself to reach that goal, and then figure out what are the actions needed to reach that goal at that time, by that time.
I understand. Thank you. Thanks.
Great. So just a follow-up question, Shubhram. Why do you invest your time and energy in startups rather than working in bigger firms where you can get uh, a different kind of experience?
And I don't like to relax. Like I hate. So if I'm sitting around, let's say there are cases like this where I would have had a very good day or very good week, and
Mhm.
then I have given myself time off for, let's say, a couple of days, saying ki yaar, this week went well. I did all in the right spirit. I was getting the results I wanted. Let's decompress for the end of the week and let's start afresh the next week. I get extremely bored in that phase of decompression. So I have like I've reduced it significantly. The only reason I take it is to ensure that like I'm at that same energy level the next week and so on. Like for me, rest is not relaxation. It's more about preparing for the next fight. I like to like me being into boxing would clear that I love fights, be it physical, be it mental.
Makes sense. You want to be on the fire all the ways, all the time.
Yeah, I think that's the case for me.
Okay. So just another question. I think one of the person asked, but still, I came across Iterate.ai. Likewise, I saw a few other products as well. Like there would be a whiteboard. You can they can draw the wireframe, and it would generate the front end code.
Yeah, yeah.
So I can clearly say that it creates wow, but whereas your product Iterate AI makes me to understand that okay, it is solving something different on a longer vision.
Yeah.
So how do you see this? But that is the product that creates me wow, not just me, many of the people. So how do you think like getting the people attracted to your product? Have you thought about
Got
it?
it. Yeah, yeah. So let's forget about the long-term vision for a while. Let's focus on what we are building now, right?
Mhm.
Now, it all depends on who the target persona is. So I feel that more than delighting everyone, if I'm able to solve a problem for a very small niche set of audience, it's better place to start, right? Now, the thing that I am building is specifically targeted to people, companies who have their in-house team, who have built out a product, and then they are facing this problem of having to wait to deploy changes to that product as and when they learn new things about the market where they are operating. So let's take any app. Let's say Stable Money could be one example, right? Stable Money has invested enough to have a very strong development team and has created a beautiful product. But the product managers at Stable Money are in constant touch with the users and then learn new things. They will learn new things. And as and when they learn new things, they want to incorporate whatever they have learned into the product. And that's where they have to depend on app developers again, depend on the development team to get that done, right? Whereas development team already has a lot of core stuff in their plate that they are working on. Let's say if I'm giving a hypothetical example here, let's say fixed deposit is something that's there, right? Let's say the development team is already working on adding bonds into the app, right? That's the core focus. Now, if a product manager who is working on the fixed deposit product, they come and ask the development team to prioritize something that will enhance the experience of the FD product, it's hard for them to get bandwidth for this, because at this point the core focus is on the new product, right? And at that time they can fiddle, like if you see how these companies, like the people in these companies, they can fiddle around with tools, as you were saying. So I think the one that you were saying was TL draw, make real.tl draw. So let's say they can fiddle around, they can add a wireframe, see the code getting generated. That would be wow, but that doesn't solve any problem for them. Because what they want is in their code, in their app, they want to make changes, right? And that, there is no way to do that using these tools, right? So that's the problem I'm trying to solve. And I don't see competition from these pure play design to code generation tools, because those, again, you have to understand that those tools exist for a reason. The core audience for those kind of tools are people who do not have an in-house development team, companies which do not have an in-house development team, or individuals who are trying out with new ideas. And at this point, they do not have like people to pay for, and they are trying to deploy those ideas as fast as possible using these tools instead of having to fiddle around with the code of it, right? So the target audience they serve for is different, and the target audience I am trying to serve is different.
Makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. Following that, Shubhram, let me deal with a simple example. Toys. A lot of toys are there, right? Children love those toys, but they are not going to buy. Parents are going to buy, right? So same way, I think your target audience are going to be product managers, decision makers, those who are going to pay for the product. Have you thought about that?
So yeah, it's very simple actually. So while my user is a product manager, all that, like, and I'm solving a problem for that user, but what I'm trying to actually solve for is the impact of it. And that's where my long-term vision comes into play. My vision is every company should be able to provide a delightful experience to its users. Now, how fast can a company reach there? And that's what I'm solving for. So my pitch to, let's say, a CEO would be, hey man, this is a tool I'm building, and this will 10x the speed at which you are able to create delightful experiences for your users, right? How does it do so is something that I will explain to the product manager. Hey, you don't have to depend on the app developer. You can do it yourself. So what is the impact is something that should go to the head of product or to the CEO, co-founders of the company, etc. And how will that impact be achieved? Whether it is better, the approach to get that impact is better than what approach they have today is something that you have to convince to be real users who would use the product. I think this is a classic problem of customer user disparity.
Yeah. Okay. So do we have any questions, Siddharth? Or can I go with?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. So from your LinkedIn post, Subhram, I saw that regarding product-led growth, PLG, problem statement. You have been talking with many product people, and you got a great set of insights. So would you like to summarize on that? How was the experience, one side, and another side is, what is the core thing you are able to learn from that with it, talking to so much of people?
I think if I come to insights, it's very nuanced, but I'll come to that. Experience-wise, I think the best part of this process was talking to people who work across different kind of industries, trying to take care of different kind of products, while my personal experience by virtue of work has been with B2C app based thing, right? So I built consumer apps in the past. I had no idea about platform products. I had no idea about web-based products. I had no idea about API products. So, or B2B like products that cater to a business than a consumer. So just getting some rough idea around that by virtue of speaking to people, because in a conversation, of course, there's a point where you will ask specific questions respective to the answers you want. But before that, you try to get to know what the business is about, how do they deal with the day-to-day activities, what are the day-to-day activities, and so on. So that experience was pretty good, insightful to an extent where I know bits and pieces of different industries, different kind of products, and so on. With respect to insights and specifically about product-led growth, I think there were some, like one was like lots of companies are trying to focus on customization or rather personalization of their product. So if you think from the core, what is product-led growth? Product-led growth is basically building a product so delightful that people end up referring it to their friends and others whom they know, right? Now, in that, a very critical role that probably is like in the future, this will be something which I believe will be the future, where like personalization would play a very critical role. So let's say you use Swiggy and I use Swiggy, right? In Swiggy, what you go and how you behave could be different. So for example, you are someone who searches for a food item, then goes into the then looks into the food item being available across any restaurant and find out what is the like where from you want to order. Versus I am someone, I have a bias towards the restaurant. I go into that restaurant page and then figure out what food item to order and so on. The path to ordering of food is different for you versus me, right? But the experience today is same. So can the experience be suited so that as soon as I open my Swiggy app, I see that restaurant at the top instead of seeing, and let's say if I have a restaurant bias versus you having a food dish bias, you can see that dish at the top, right? So that level of customization with respect to what is the behavior that the user has shown on the product, that's something that people are trying out with. There are companies that are coming out to help there. So there was this interesting company called Fiber, FIBR, that helps with the personalized landing pages inside your app or website, depending on what advertisement you saw outside before installing the app or before landing on that web page. That was one interesting thing that I figured out. Second was with respect to analytics, where today's analytics platforms, like the ones that have been there in existence for long, typically focus on one side of analytics. So there are two kind of players. One who are one is the likes of Mixpanel, Amplitude, etc., which help you track app side events, and then you can do analysis on top of what a user is doing inside the app. But there are lots of things that are relevant to the data, user's data. So for example, how many orders the user has if I take the same Swiggy example, how many orders did the user place? What is the total amount of money that the user has spent in this 1 month? Right? These are data that is not stored on the app site, right? And therefore cannot be passed to tools like Mixpanel, Amplitude, etc. So analysis of such data happens using SQL in tools like Redash, Metabase, etc. Right? But people are looking forward to having one place where they can analyze across data of the user and data about the user's activity in the app at a point of time, right? So there are companies like Houseware, Segwise, etc., which are coming up, which are merging the two kinds of data: the user data which resides in the database and the app events data which flows to Mixpanel MoEngage. They are trying to make everything come together in one place in their platform where you can do analysis on top of it. That was the second trend I observed. While speaking this, I was thinking about this third trend. Give me 1 second. I'll just quickly recall the third one that I was thinking about. I just got lost in the loop. But there was this third interesting thing that, yeah, I remembered. So with respect to engaging end users, right? Let's say marketers use tools like MoEngage, Clever Tap, etc., to engage end users. What I've seen happening in these kind of tools is that like all the app events that triggered these campaigns in these tools, those events are getting stored in ultimately in the respective tool, and then you can use that tool to send events and all. But in the recent like funding environment that we saw, where people were spending, like companies were focusing on decreasing the amount of spends that they do on a particular product, on B2B products that they are using. There has been kind of shift towards this data native customer engagement platform. And when I say data native customer engagement platform, what I mean is these customer engagement platforms won't store any data for you, and therefore there is no cost of storing data. Rather, they will connect to your data warehouse wherever you are storing your data, and then you can run logic to fetch data points from that store, like from that warehouse, for a particular campaign. So you are no longer paying for the storage space and instead paying for actual campaigns that you run using these this thing. So I forgot the name of the company, but I remember the guy who is building on top of this. He's building a data, what do you call this? Warehouse native customer engagement platform. So that's another trend that I've seen quite a lot.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I think another one, there was this very interesting thing where PLG companies, like companies which adopt a PLG, product-led growth motion, to get growth, they face this one problem where they get a lot of users trying their product, but then they face the difficulty in finding out who will monitor, like who will be the right person to pay for the product. Because let's take a Notion for an example, right? I use Notion, right? Lots of other people also use Notion, but when we pitch Notion to the company saying, hey, this is one thing you can, like, we should get subscription for, it's very hard to make that pitch, right? Imagine company A, which has 2 people using Notion out of 20 people, versus company B, which has 15 people using Notion out of 20 people. There's a very high likelihood that company B will put the money to a subscription for the entire org, right? Now, all the companies which take this product-led growth kind of a motion where they try to get more and more users to use their product without having a paywall first, they struggle with analyzing and figuring out who is the right audience to tap into and ask for an engage and finally get into a paying customer, right? So there's this set of tools that have evolved in the recent past, like that's been there for one year, Abhi, top line and all, who try to like give you insights around, hey, now is the time to tap into this customer. Like you get triggers to know when to tap into which customer. So that's another interesting thing that I found out with respect to product-led growth.
Interesting. Really, even I tend to see and learn a different set of perspectives with respect to PLG. And thanks for that. Yes, Sujay, please unmute yourself, please.
Yeah. Shubhram, that is great insights you've been giving for this session. I'm just asking you a product manager related question to the actual problems you're solving. I went through some of the use cases, and one use case which we solved long back was the chatbot issue. A chatbot which gives context and looks at the entities of a problem and entities of the company and gives proper responses. But considering that 21% of the world's websites are built using WordPress and a 2% using Drupal, these kinds of companies would be an ideal market for you. And each of these companies are trying to configure their chatbots So my question is, why aren't you looking at this kind of market?
I am not sure if you are referring to the right product. Are you referring to the product which I put out in the concept video recently, where there is a tool that can change content on the app, that can do instrumentation, that can give a pre-prod APK, all by taking inputs in natural language? Is that the product you are talking about?
Yeah, that is the one. I saw it in one of the interplay like case studies.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know about that. Can you send me a link? It might be a different one also. Like I'll just take a look and be able to answer your question better, because the one that you are like I am building right now, and like what answer I can give with respect to why I am not targeting companies that are producing websites using WordPress or not is again like going back to the fact that who faces the problem here, right? So companies which are building products using WordPress, if the product manager of that company has to go and change something, it's not really a problem for that person, because because WordPress is providing that interface from where they can make the change. So the problem is solved for them at least. But on the other hand, if you look at an Android app and the product manager who is handling that Android app, the problem is not solved for that person, and that's where I want to solve the problem for that person.
Okay, got it. But I mean, you're doing innovation. That's what I would say, and this innovation could be used in multiple fronts.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I was just supporting a friend who was launching his own crowd management portal. They have to match different crowds to different audience, and they're creating networks. So, in this case, whatever use case you had would be highly beneficial. So,
Interesting.
yes. So let me get in touch with you.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Since I am anyway looking for pilot customers, this coming from you is really useful, meaningful. Thanks, man.
Yeah, welcome.
Nice. That's a nice question, Sujay. Thanks for that. So I
One
think
more question from Dishank.
yeah.
Maybe it's more pointed towards your product you are working on. Like, what are the KPIs you are using to measure the success of your product?
I have only one KPI right now to get the first pilot customer.
Makes sense. No problem. Okay. Yeah, I think we are almost time. So let me go with the final question. For Shubh, like, so since you have been doing some research about this career while you are at IIT, right? So what are some common myths about product management role that you'd like to bust?
It needs coding experience. B, it needs MBA. Yeah, I think these two were the most common.
Really? Yeah, I agree to that too.
And three, it's fancy. It's not fancy. Like on the outside, it looks fancy, but when you go into the nuances, it depends on like what kind of person you are. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I am someone who can vouch for a product management career any day in my life. But I have seen people not enjoying it as well. And very smart people not enjoying it.
Okay. Yes, I think we can call for the day, Siddharth, if there are no questions. So
Okay. Does anybody has any question? Like, maybe before we wrap up, this is your last chance before we end the call. Okay. I couldn't see any hands raised or any messages so far. Yeah. Thanks, Shubhram, and thanks, Dinesh, for hosting it. Yeah. Thank you.
Just like thanks for having me here, and pretty engaging conversation. And I was glad that people actually came out asking questions. So very happy to have done this.
Yeah. Thanks for your time. Thanks, everyone.
So Shubh, would you like to stay for a minute? Shubh and Siddharth.
Thank you guys. It was a great conversation.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. I think Shubh has left. No problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. I think can we stop the recording, Siddharth?
Yeah.